studies. He completed his MA in 2014 and has served as a spiritual guide at a full-time Islamic school in Ontario until 2019. As of 2020, he's the Dean of Mission at Rise Academy, an assistant resident scholar at the Saba Center in San Jose, California, and we're honored to have him with us for this Muhurram. I'd also like to remind you all about the Majlis and Sabil sponsorships. As you all know, that these programs are only really possible with your help and through your donations, and we do have quite a few spots open up. So please visit us outside at the booth, and inshallah we can set you up with a sponsorship. We have Majlis sponsorships going for $400 and Sabil sponsorships going for $200. So you can, yeah, like I mentioned, visit us outside at the booth or contact the number on the screen right now. We're also excited to start something new this year called Alim Hours, where we'll have one-on-one sessions with Sheikh Salim. If you'd like to speak privately with him, you may book a one-on-one session through the front desk, whether it's for personal advice or further discussion. Slots are available, which are 15-minute slots, are available on a first-come, first-served basis on 3 dates. So for more information about that and booking a slot, you can visit us at the front desk as well. We're also proud to launch our exclusive Muhurram long sleeve shirts, available for $25 each. We have sizes in both adult and youth, and when you buy a shirt, you also get a free headband, which is really cool. And all proceeds support youth programming, and for that as well, you can visit us at the booth. We're also hosting discussions with the Sheikh this Muhurram. We're going to have 2 brothers-only discussions on June 28th and June 30th. 2 sisters-only discussions on June 29th and July 1st, and 1 co-ed discussion on July 2nd. For that, the Sheikh has generously allowed us to choose what we want to talk about, which is why, if you have been paying attention to our socials, you'll know that we've released forms for you guys as a poll to learn what you'd like to discuss with the Sheikh and help us narrow down on a topic. So those polls can be accessed through our socials, and I believe they should be on the TV as well. If they're not, I'm apologizing. And those are open till 9:30 today. I'd also like to remind all of you about the Mahdi Scholarship Program, which is open to undergraduate and graduate students. We have 4 scholarships available at $2,500 each. Details can be found on our socials, Instagram and WhatsApp. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to scholarships@cig.ca. A reminder that there is a parallel children's program each night in the basement for ages 4 to 11. Parents are encouraged to bring their children there where they'll participate in age-appropriate programming during the English lecture. We thank all parents who bring their children to participate in Azah. If your child does become restless in the main hall, we kindly ask that you accompany them to the basement where you can continue listening to the majlis. Let us also be mindful and patient with our youngest attendees and their families so we can foster a welcoming environment that nurtures their connection to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, inshaAllah. I'd also like to ask for you to recite Fatiha for the marhumin of tonight's sponsors, as well as marhum Sayyid Asad Jafri. Al-Fatiha. I'd like you to please stand up and move forward as space is filling up fast as we invite the Sheikh up with 3 loud salawats.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد. وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. ولعن الله الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله في كتابه المجيد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم واخشوا يوما لا يجزي والد عن ولده ولا مولود هو جاز عن والده شيئا إن وعد الله حق فلا تغرنكم الحياة الدنيا ولا يغرنكم الغرور. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Please recite salawat. Respected elders, brothers, sisters, may Allah reward you and us for your commemoration and mourning and participation in the majlis of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Inshallah, we pray that the Imam of our time is pleased with our participation and our putting on these types of programs. May Allah reward you for all your efforts. The topic that I chose for our series is the great deceivers. And yesterday I had a chance to introduce this topic and explain the motivation for why I did choose this topic. The word deceivers comes from the ayah of Quran that I just recited at the beginning, in which Allah speaks to human beings as a whole. And He tells them that there are two things that you need to be aware of because they have a great potential to deceive you. One of them is ala hayatud dunya and the other one is al-gharur. And when we're talking about deception, we defined yesterday that al-ghurur, from a Quranic perspective, it refers to a type of deception which harms somebody. Like what the example that's given is that imagine that you're traveling in the desert, you see a mirage, and you get excited. The water is there, so what do? You waste the water that you have, thinking that you're going to get water soon. You get to the mirage, and you see that there's nothing there. I want to give an example to start out with to help us picture visually what's going on here. And I think this is important for all of us because we need to understand how serious this is. This example comes from an ancient fable or ancient, like let's say, fairy tale. And the way it works is this. There is a man who is running from his camel. The camel has lost its mind. So I don't know if you've seen a camel before, but camels are pretty big. And they can be a great blessing of Allah. They're like ships on the land. But if they come running after you, you better run. So the camel is running after this man. And what does he do? He's in great peril. So he runs along and he finds a pit in which he can find refuge. The camel is too big to enter into the pit. And so what he does is he throws himself into the pit. Here is his safe place from the camel that's attacking him. He gets into the pit, and there's a tree that's growing from the edge of the pit. He grabs on to the roots of the tree. So he's not going to fall in. Everything's good so far, right? I hope you have your picture in your mind. The camel, the mad camel, the guy in the pit, he's holding the roots of the tree. But it doesn't just stop there. When he gets down into the pit, he's holding the roots. He realizes that his feet have a place to rest as well. But when he looks down, he sees that his feet are resting on the heads of 4 snakes. So it's a soft surface, 4 snakes. Then he looks up again at the branches that he's holding onto, and he sees a group of mice that are gnawing away at the branches. Some of them are white, and some of them are black. And he looks down again. He sees what? He sees the 4 heads of the snakes. But he looks even deeper, and he sees that there's a dragon that's waiting down there. If he were to fall down, if he lets go, or if the snakes don't provide a good surface for him to put his feet on, he's going to be eaten by the dragon. In that perilous situation, suddenly, right in front of him, he sees a honeycomb. And he says that, you know what? This honeycomb, right? It looks pretty good. It looks tantalizing. Let me go and try the honey. So he begins to lick the honey, and he realizes that he enjoys it so much. So he takes more and more and more. And in the meantime, the mice are doing their job. They're gnawing away at the roots of the tree. Eventually, while he's busy eating the honey, the branches are going to break. He falls down, and he's snapped up by the dragon. You got it. So you got it. All right, he's snapped up by the dragon. Okay, now this is an allegory, right? And this, I'm telling you this, it comes from an ancient sort of folklore and fairy tale. But I remember in one of the books on ethics that we read in the Hausa, they had actually illustrated the same scene here. And it came, if I'm not mistaken, under the chapter of ghafla, meaning that what is the reality of somebody who is deceived and in a state of heedlessness. Now here's the question. What do those different things represent here? Okay, the man is in peril, right? We know that here we have to hold on to firm handholds, the al-urat al-wathqa, or we're going to be in peril ourselves. The mice are black and white. Anybody know what the black and white mice represent? Day and night. Day and night. Ahsan. Day and night. Every day and every night that comes by is one step closer to our departure from this world. What is it that the snakes represent? The 4 snakes, according to ancient traditions of health and medicine, they portrayed the health of a human being depending on 4 qualities being balanced: dryness, moisture, heat, and cold. All diseases they would classify as being an imbalance of one of these 4 elements. And so if one were to, let's say one of the snakes were to go down and the other one were to rear its head higher, he might be imbalanced and he falls down. And what does the dragon represent? The dragon represents death, right? In the sense that it's waiting for us. It's just a matter of time before it comes to us. Now, anybody who pictures themselves in that situation, right? It's not a nice thing we want to kind of consider, right? It makes us ponder. It makes us stop, right? And if we think about it, right, we look at it from the outside, we're like, wait a minute. What a foolish thing that the man is doing right there. In that situation, rather than trying to preserve his life, rather than trying to make the most of whatever is there, figure out what to do with the mad camel, whatever it is, what does he do? He sits there and he eats some honey, right? What a foolish thing to do. This is an act of deception. He's deceived by the honey, and he's now doing things to harm himself, and the ultimate end is that he's going to be in a state of regret. Brothers and sisters, on the day of Ashura, Imam Hussein alayhi salam is speaking to the enemy army. And one of the ayahs of the Quran that he quotes to them is the end of the ayah that I recited, which is, do not let yourselves be deceived by al-hayatud dunya. Do not let yourselves be deceived by al-gharur. Do not let yourselves be deceived by the great deceivers. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli, hafidhahullah, in his great work of tafsir, which is known as Tafsir Tasneem, has described 7 techniques that shaitan uses to play with us. You know, al-hayatud dunya in the Quran, like our lives in this world, the Quran describes it as being lahwun wa la'ibun. Wa mal hayatud dunya illa lahwun wa la'ib. This worldly life is nothing but play and sport. It's something which is trifle, diversion, and play and sport. Now, there's one time when you have a game, and there's another time when you have a game master. And the game master's job is to conduct the game. And the way that Ayatollah Jawadi Amali describes it in his tafsir, he says that the game master here is the devil and all of the devilish forces, which comprises both jinns and human beings. Inshallah, we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about that later. But he says that that force that's there, this is part of the nature of the test of human beings. There are 7 steps that shaitan uses to play with human beings, to get them to be diverted and to deceive them. If one doesn't work, he goes to the next one. If that doesn't work, he goes to the next one. And those 7 games, 7 techniques are described in the Quran. I'm going to briefly list them right now, and inshallah, with the help of Allah, over the course of these nights, we're going to be covering these 7 and giving examples of how we can sometimes get played by the shaitan. And we're going to be practical, right? Even today, inshallah, we're going to be talking about one of them, and we're going to give practical examples of how we can be deceived. The 7 steps are, number 1, distorting reality. Number 2, procrastination. Number 3, embellishments and threats. Number 6, desires. And number 7, easy but common ways, extremely effective and common ways that he plays with human beings is by distorting reality for them. He creates false beliefs. People believe in things, and they believe those things to be truth and believe those things to be facts, and they align their actions according to their beliefs. This is a common thing. The reason why you are all here tonight is because of a belief that you hold dearly in your heart, and you're acting on that belief. So shaitan will do this. He will get people to be firmly entrenched in viewpoints that are incorrect, and they will take a path away from Allah. They'll be deceived, and he'll have accomplished his objective. So we're going to look at a couple of examples. One of them is an example of people out there, right? Meaning that not people that, inshallah, nobody here. But we're going to use that to then come back home and try to see within ourselves if some of this might have crept into us as well. So the example I want to give, right? If I look at the world around us, and I want to look at an example of people who have distorted view of brothers and sisters, I can't help but cleansing, and they be displaced and be relocated to some other place so that we can have access to their lands. You know how many of them said that we're okay with that? A good 82% of them. Then they asked them, they said that, how many of you do you believe, do you believe that we should continue to cover, the difficulties the Palestinians are going through? Let's say, how many of them are being killed and different events that are happening. By the way, just today, according to reports, either between 15 to 20 tents, they dropped a bomb on them. And those tents had families in them. That just happened today, right? And it's horrific. And it's horrific that nobody's covering this in mass media. But anyway, I don't want to dismiss that, but just to point out that this continues to happen. They asked them, how many of you think that we shouldn't even cover this anymore in the news? Then they said that 64% said that we should just forget about covering in the news as well. And then here's the real thing that shocked me. They asked them that, do you agree with the extermination of the Palestinians, men, women, and children? You know how many of them indicated that they would be okay with a genocide, with a Holocaust? They said that 47% of them said that, yes, we'd be okay with the extermination of the Palestinian people. Now, how is it that we're living in this century and at this time, and we can have people who are supposedly educated, people who go to universities, people who know something about history, and they have this type of belief, and they take these types of actions? Right? We have to ask these questions. How is it, or from our framework that we're trying to examine things, how is it that they have been deceived in this type of deception? And one of the ways that we can examine this is through looking at how they've been educated. There's been some great research done on how is it that an entire generation of so-called human beings, I don't know if I can call them human beings, have been raised to have this type of hatred in their hearts and willingness to commit violence against innocent people. That itself would be like a whole exploration, right? But I want to just summarize, and you could take a whole series just looking at that, because it's fascinating as well. What is the role of education in being able to create, certain ideologies and to be able to distort reality for people? It's something which is it's a well-known sort of thing. But anyway, if we want to summarize, I want to just take maybe 4 or 5 points about the education of Israelis. What is it that they're taught that allows them to have these types of actions and these type of beliefs? And again, how am I approaching this, brothers and sisters? I'm talking about them out there, right? But then we're going to bring it back home, right? So I'm setting this up for a discussion to be practical for us. So when we're describing these things, let's not just be dismissive and say that, oh, how misleaded and how ignorant and how lost they are. They are, right? But we need to be looking at ourselves. So number one, the first thing that they do is that they find a way to forget about history. Okay, they selectively cover parts of history. For example, in their textbooks, they don't talk about the Nakba. They don't talk about the great expulsion of Palestinians from their homes when the mandate was enacted and the Palestine was basically Israel was established in Palestinian lands. They don't talk about how 3/4 of Palestinians had to leave their homes. They don't talk about how there were 400 towns that were completely destroyed and taken over and renamed, and their entire history was wiped out. They just might mention that word in their history books. If they present the Palestinians in their textbooks, they present them as something far from being a real human being that relate to. For example, they'll show them next to like simple homes, and they'll say that these Arabs, they prefer to live in simple homes even though they could live in high rises, right? So they do this thing of dehumanizing the Palestinians. One of the other things that they do is that they institute this system of relative ethics. Okay, the Israeli populace has been taught that when you have certain principles, they can be bent if it's going to be in the benefit of the Zionist goals. Okay, for example, what? Right? The sacredness of human life. What do they say? Right? They say that human rights of Palestinians should not be a recipe for suicide of our nation. Meaning what? Meaning that, okay, yeah, human rights are good, but when it comes to something that might harm our existential status as this, nation or what they think of themselves, as they are, right? Well, we shouldn't let Palestinian rights come in the way of that. We can trample those rights if it means we can preserve our nation. What did they say in their textbook? They say that we can slaughter of friendly Palestinians, the slaughter of friendly Palestinians, it brought about the flight of other Palestinians, which enabled the establishment of this country. So they say that, you know what, yeah, there were people who were killed who were friendly, but it was okay because other people fled because it kind of made room for us so we could go and take their homes. So it's something which is justified. Inshallah, I'll continue, but if I can ask you to please, as brothers, there's other brothers coming in, there's no room for them in the back. If I could ask you to come forward one more time with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So brothers and sisters, if we want to summarize, right, and there's so much more that we could say about this, but just to take this as a case study, we have these different factors that are leading to a distorted view of reality. We have a forgetting of history. We have the othering, right? We have this sort of relative ethics. And there's more that we could say, but let's leave it at that. Now, when we go to the Quran tells us in a few ayahs, what is the basis of distorted view of reality? And the ayah is as follows. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما هي إلا حياتنا الدنيا نموت ونحيا وما يهلكنا إلا الدهر وما نحن بمبعوثين. What is it that the kuffar believe in? What is their distorted view of reality? How do they actually perceive themselves, in their life, and what is it that governs what they do? They say that it's only about our life in this world. We die and we live, and the only thing that is going to cause us to perish is time, and we will never be resurrected. I know you've probably read this ayah before, right? But it's really worth pondering upon. Somebody who has this viewpoint. One thing I want to mention here is that sometimes people think that when the Quran describes kuffar, the Quran is describing people who don't believe in God. Okay? Actually, if we look at the history of the kuffar at the time of our Prophet, and we look at what the Quran says about them, they actually did believe in God. They would call him Allah. They would at times call out to him. In some of the ancient inscriptions, caves in the pre-Islam allowed them to stand against the message of Islam. Okay, so they had a distorted view of reality. What would they say? They would say that, okay, it's just about our time in this world, right? We live and we die, right? And there's no real purpose beyond this short time that we have here in this world. So what does that allow them to do? It allows them to see that their purpose in this world is the maximization of their own pleasures and their own desires. They set their own path, right? Everything is centered around themselves. They forget about the bigger purpose, what we're here for and what we're striving for. They look at themselves and say, what is it that I want? I becomes the axis for truth and falsehood. Now, practically, how does this affect us? Brothers and sisters, distorted view of reality, right? There's one time if somebody were to give you an article or let's say a textbook that's given to school children who are going to school in occupied Palestine, if you look at it, you'd be like, this is ridiculous. I don't accept this. But a lot of times, the distorted reality that we might be subject to doesn't come to us in an obvious form. It's something which is very subtle. Let me ask you this question. If somebody were to say this word, ask you this question, what are your core values? Right? Would you be offended? Right? Would you say that, no, this is something which is not like a good question to ask? Or could there be anything like, sort of, let's say, misleading about this question? Right? I'd be like, no, that's a very innocent question. What about the concept of core values? Right? Maybe it would be a core values. Like, yeah, that sounds cool. Right? Core values is a really good term. And it can be a good term. It can be. We can talk about the core values of Islam. We can talk about the core values of Quran, the core values of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But here's the real catch here. If somebody asks you, what are your core values, right? And then they say that, you know what, it's really important for you to be authentic to those core values in whatever you do. If you have a problem, you're trying to solve a certain dispute, trying to figure out what to do in life, go back to your core values and see how they will advise you and guide you to what you want to do. Now, this is getting into murky territory here. And in a wife, for example, right, I need you to hear me. I need you to assure me. After all, they say that marriage is supposed to be that place where you can put down your armor and you can take it off and you have that type of solace and refuge in your partner. So I need you to hear me. I need that solace. But the other one says that, no, but you know what? This is one of my values, is that I'm an individual, right? I'm not good at being able to discern emotions of others, and this is just the way I am. Take it or leave it. Right? This becomes a difficult obstacle then in terms of trying to be able to resolve conflicts in that marriage. What are they going to do? Please recite salawat. If somebody says that, okay, well, this is the value that I stand with, right? I picked it, right? Then what to say? What are you to say to challenge me on that? I'll give you another example. Sometimes there are people who are very blunt, right? It's just a habit that they have. They just say whatever's on their mind, and later on, if they need to, sometimes if it comes up, they'll apologize for what they say. And if you go to them sometimes and you ask them and you say that, so what's going on here? Right? Why is it that you're always so blunt? They'll say that, well, I'm being authentic to who I am. This is my true self. Right? Take it or leave it. This is the way I am. Okay, now this again becomes a difficult proposition here. How can you deal with somebody who has this distorted view of reality that this is who they are and this is what they're going to be? Sometimes it creates huge problems, again, in families or in relationships, because they're always saying things they shouldn't say. But they say that, no, this is the way I should be. I go to my therapist says that you should be true to who you are. Right? If this is a value that you believe in, they won't say bluntness, but you believe in being sincere and open and having open communication, right? Then go ahead and do that. Now, what is the center of this, right? The center of this is what? Is that a distorted perception of reality. Sometimes we reduce the view of who we are to something which is so tiny. وَمَا هِيَ إِلَّا حَيَاتُنَا الدُّنْيَا نَمُوتُ وَنَحْيَا. We think of ourselves as a human being who just goes from cradle to the grave and that's it. We ignore the fact that our body is a carrier, our body is a vehicle, but that which is going to be everlasting is our soul. And that soul has been endowed with a fitrah and with certain values and certain traits that can be flourished. And yes, we might have some traits which are negative, but we can work on those. We can develop those. Our ayat of the Quran, the ahadith are so filled with amazing insight as to who we are. I don't have time to go through in too much detail, but I did want to share a story that I was remembering today. It's a story from Shaheed Mutahari, one of our great scholars of recent times. Shaheed Mutahari says that I once saw in my dream that I was walking the streets of Tehran. And I was walking nearby a cinema. And there was a man who was crying for help, but everyone was ignoring him. This is in his dream. So I go to this man in my dream, and I say that you need some help. Can I help you with something? He says that yes, I've left this world. I've died, right? But I'm suffering in this next world. Can you do something, call my family, tell them that this is my situation, and tell them to do these things. For example, give this money back to this person, ask this person to forgive me, and other things like that. And he gives them 3 instructions. Then he says that, well, how can I get in touch with them? This is all in his dream. He says that you can get in touch with them by calling this phone number. Okay? So Sheikh Mutahari wakes up, and immediately he jots down the phone number that he heard in the dream. The next morning, he calls that number, and he says that, is this the home of so-and-so? And they say, yes. Who are you? He says, I'm Murtaza Mutahari. So what do you want, right? Then he tells them about the dream. Everything that he had seen in his dream, right, was exactly the way it was, right? The family was aware somebody had died, and he had some debts relating to that cinema, and they were very grateful and thankful to him because now they could help their marhum who had left this world. Brothers and sisters, these stories are not uncommon. There's so many of them. They remind us that we are much more than this limited being that sometimes we have this distorted reality of. We don't think about what is our history. Just like they want to cover history, right? They're not brought up with it. We don't think about our history. Where do we come from? Where are we going to? Right? What do we need to achieve right now for that objective out there? Right? These who am I, right, is not defined, should not be defined by my narrow perspective. Right? I need to find out the way I can be. Imam Ali says what? He says that in lam takun haliman fatahallam. If you do not find within yourself a good quality, like the quality of being able to tolerate and being able to put up with others and to be patient with them, meaning that if you are somebody who snaps at others and you're blunt and whatever, right? Fatahallam, practice doing it, right? Teach yourself, train yourself. فَيُوشَكَ أَن يَكُونَ قَوْمٌ. He said how often it is the case that somebody مَنْ تَشَبَهَ بِقَوْمٍ, that somebody resembles a people and they become of them. Meaning that he says that that's a way that you can actually develop that trait of becoming patient and becoming humble. Right? This is the teachings we have from Islam. Right? It's much different than that distorted reality that we can get from looking at ourselves from a narrow perspective. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, with the help of Allah, we'll continue our discussion of these different games that shaitan can play with us to cause us to fall into deep deception. And we'll cover more examples and practical examples from real life. And inshallah, in doing so, we can adopt and really understand some of the core principles of the mission of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Tonight is the second night of Muhurram, and is the night in which we remember the entrance of the caravan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in the land of Karbala. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibn Rasulillah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibn Ali al-Murtada وابن فاطمة الزهراء. صلى الله عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز معكم فوزا عظيما. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you, O beloved Imam Hussein, son of Ali, son of Fatima. Peace and blessings be upon you and upon those noble companions who are buried with you in Karbala. We say to them, if only we were with you and had attained that great victory that you attained. In hadith, we're told that the land of Karbala was a special land throughout history. There has not ever been a prophet or a successor of a prophet, but that they visited in Karbala. They spent some time there, remembering the tragedy that would befall Imam Hussein. They would weep over that tragedy, and they would teach their companions about this. Nabi Isa alayhi salam went there with his companions once. He gathered them, he told them the story of what would happen to Hussein. He began to weep. He told them that he will be the grandson of the last prophet, and his mother will be the Batul, and she will be like my mother. We're told that in history, Imam Ali alayhi salam, after the battle of Siffin, he took a detour. He went to the land of Karbala. His companions saw when he entered this land, his mood changed. He began to weep profusely. He told people that this is the place where the lovers of Allah will be buried. This is the place where they will become shaheed. This is the place where their blood will be spilled. He took some earth from the Karbala and he took the scent of it and he said that, Ya laha, what a beautiful scent this soil has. Why is it so beautiful? Because it is the soil that will have the pure blood of the Ahlul Bayt. Imam Hussein alayhi salam is with his women and his children and with his companions. They have traveled many days over the desert sand. They are making their way in the desert. Imam Hussein alayhi salam asks, what is this land? They tell him that this is the land of Nainawa. Some reports say that he asked, does it have another name? And yes, it has another name. It is known as Karbala. Imam Hussein alayhi salam says that هذا أرض كرب وبلاء. This is the land of difficulty and affliction. Imagine those children who are traveling. Maybe they're thinking that they can finally find a home in the place they're going to put up their tents. Maybe they're thinking that maybe they can go back to Medina and be near the grave of Rasulullah. They can go back to their homes, but now they are in this desert, the desert land of Karbala. In one report we're told that Nabi Adam alayhi salam, that when he saw the names of the 5 Panjatan on the Arsh, he recited one of them one by one, Muhammad, Ali, Fatima, Hassan, Al-Hussein. And when he said Al-Hussein, he felt a sadness in his heart. He asked Jibreel alayhi salam, Oh Jibreel, why do I feel this sadness in my heart? Jibreel tells him, this is Hussein, the grandson of Rasulullah. Let me tell you, on the day of Ashura, he will be in Karbala, and his thirst will be so great that it will be as if he sees smoke in his eyes. Jibreel alayhi salam and Adam begin to cry the way amidst the thirst of Imam Hussein says, will you give me some water, even a drop for you to drink? It is with a thirsty mouth that Imam Hussein alayhi salam begins to call upon his Lord. Oh my Lord, I am pleased with your decree. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. ماتم يا حسين.
Hussein, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
Hello, hello.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein. 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 Hayya ala khairil amal. Hayya ala khairil amal. Hayya ala khairil amal. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. تجھے دیکھ کے مر جانا تجھے دیکھ کے مر جانا بیمار ہے صغرا ہے چاند محرم کے تو بدلی میں چلا جا ہے چاند محرم کے تو بدلی میں چلا جا ہے چاند محرم کے تو بدلی میں چلا جا وعدہ جو کہ تو بدلی میں چلا جا ہے چاند محرم کے تو بدلی میں چلا جا ہے چاند محرم کے تو بدلی میں چلا جا بہنوں کا تو بھائیوں سے رشتہ ہی عجب ہے تم بھول گئے مجھ کو